Season 4 opens on a cold winter's night. Toby suggests that the best way to pass the storm would be to tell a story, and so Thomas tells them a story about three little engines from years ago. They lived on their own railway and were named Duke, Stewart, and Falcon. Duke was the oldest of the three, and so Stewart and Falcon would constantly make fun of him for being, well, old, even giving him the nickname Grand Puff. However, Stewart and Falcon are a bit of young troublemakers, and this doesn't sit kindly with Duke. So Duke tells them the story about this other engine. His name was Smudger, and Smudger would constantly try to throw himself off of the rails. But one day, he did this too many times, and so rather than giving him a proper punishment and a lesson like just about every other engine on this show, they turn him into a fucking generator! Holy shit!
He's still there behind our shed. He'll never move again.
So, I actually did a bit of research, and it turns out this is Smudger's only episode. And since this episode is a flashback, I think it's safe to assume that Smudger is fucking dead.
Never move again.
Afterwards, business as usual on the good old railway, until Duke gets a call from his owner saying that he will no longer be of useful service due to how old he is. And so, they lock him into a fucking shed, never to leave him again. Okay, and what does Duke do? He sleeps! It'll help pass the time. And as the years go by, natural weather just continues to bury and bury the shed to the point where you can barely tell that a ship was even there to begin with. Meanwhile, Duke is still inside. The episode ends with Thomas leaving the story at that, giving the mother of all cliffhangers to the other engines. Thankfully, the next episode picks up immediately afterwards, with Thomas telling the rest of the story to the other engines as they demand the rest of the story. Basically, we cut to the present day where tons of people are talking to Sir Topham Hatt about good old Duke, and so they start a search party. They spend the entire episode searching until somebody, miraculously, is on top of the shed and crumbles down onto Duke, who is still sleeping and covered in cobwebs. They let him out, and he is reunited with his old buddies. So it's a happy ending, even though he's probably traumatized. Or maybe not, because he was just sleeping the whole time. Either way, I do recall these episodes a lot as a kid. I recall the story of Duke being very screwed up. Although I don't remember Smudger at all. I only remember Smudger because Tomska brought him up in his Thompson Friends video from years ago, which is, fun fact, the reason Steam Timber exists to begin with. And it is so much more fucked up than I remember. Like, I know everybody says that Thompson Friends is more fucked up than you remember it being, but like, oh my god, the season 4 premiere is genuinely really fucked up. Like, we're introduced to tons of new characters in this first episode, all from the distant past, but are still around. We just haven't met them yet. And like, suddenly one of them's been missing for years, and another one is basically dead because he got turned into a generator. Like, imagine if, say, you worked at McDonald's and you weren't doing your job the best and you weren't doing it correctly, but, you know, who really cares? And, you know, instead of them firing you, they turned you into the fucking grill. What the hell? Like, it is so fucked up because they are living beings, because they are sentient, because they give the trains faces, which is why whenever we see a train corpse, we don't see the frickin' face. Bulldog opens with Percy complaining about not having much to do because work hasn't started yet, with the rest of the engines telling him to shut up. Thomas in particular stating that he better calm down because Duke won't be there to save him. And so Thomas tells another Duke story. Falcon is told by the manager of the railway that he will now be going to a brand new line the next morning as soon as he gets a new coat of paint, and Duke will be showing him the way, much to Falcon's displeasure. The next day comes, and Duke and Falcon are arguing like an old married couple, which makes sense because these are the older engines on the island of Sodor. But, nevertheless, they continue on their way, and as the two continue to argue a little bit more, Falcon went over a cliff. Their drivers, the passengers, and all the civilians nearby put some more water into Duke so that he is able to properly put Falcon back on the rails. Afterwards, the two make it to their station, the crowd cheers for them, the manager pleases them, and the two are now friends. The next episode is another Duke flashback. Starting to notice a pattern here. This one just completely abandons the framing device of it being a story told by Thomas and just straight up tells us, hey, this episode takes place during this time. So Duke doesn't feel very well, and Stuart comes in, being a little turd salad yummy about it.
Tell you what, went on Stuart, you're getting old.
I don't want to get old. That was my least favorite Shyamalan film.
Sorry about that, folks. I think I just transported into another life there. As Duke continues to take his passengers to the harbor, he gets significantly worse and worse the longer he goes, and so he stops. As the passengers leave the coaches, the driver steps out and tells them all that while Duke can still make it, he's going to need some help. And who else do they get? Well, the only other engines on this line. Falcon and Stuart hook themselves up to the front and back of Duke respectively and continue their journey. They stop halfway so that Falcon can go get some passengers of his own, so Duke and Stuart are left to take care of the rest of them. The two make it to the station, with a little boy asking his father why they need two engines to pull the coaches. The father states, as a joke, that Stuart broke down and Duke is helping him. Stuart is mad over this, and Duke laughs at him, calling him a silly old engine. These episodes are pretty charming. It is really nice to see this new aspect of the island of Sodor that we haven't seen before, and, we're getting a lot of these episodes in a row, probably because, hey, we got all of these new characters, we might as well tell a bunch of stories with them, but I guess the downside of that is that we don't necessarily get to see a whole lot of our main characters. I mean, none of the characters that we've come to know throughout the first 3 seasons were in episode 4 at all. But regardless, I still had a good time revisiting these episodes. In Four Little Engines, we get introduced to 2 new engines named Skarloey and Rheneas, along with new names for Stuart and Falcon, that being Sir Handel and Peter Sam. Edward pulls up to Skarloey's shed, wondering what he's even doing there. Skarloey states that he's there to be put to rest for the day, although he does greatly miss Rheneas since he is being worked on. Then some workmen arrive to take Edward to the works, with Skarloey stating that Edward made his day. We cut to Sir Handel just going about his day, but then, there's sheep on the line! So all of that ended up being too much for Sir Handel, and now they gotta find a new engine to pull the passengers. Skarloey says he can do it, so Skarloey does it. As Skarloey heads up to the coaches start to be a little mean to him, and Skarloey doesn't really like that. Nevertheless, he's off on his way. It's business as usual until they come across some bumpy roads, and then, oh, shit, he gets all fucked up. But even in his fucked up state, he makes it, and he's happy. Good for you, bud. Ah! The next episode properly introduces us to Rheneas, where the previous one was mainly about Skarloey. Due to how old they are, the manager of the railway will be sending in 2 brand new engines to help them out. And I guess this is another prequel because those engines are Sir Handel and Peter Sam. Sir Handel bitches and whines about how old and shitty the place looks, while Peter Sam tells him to shut the fuck up. Sir Handel then comments on how old and shitty Skarloey looks before Peter Sam apologizes for his friend's behavior. Afterwards, Sir Handel has to go and pull the express, but is frustrated on how, you guessed it, old and shitty the coaches are. He stops at a station, where he meets Gordon. Gordon introduces himself, and Sir Handel asks if he's an express engine. He then goes on and on about how great the express is and how great Gordon's coaches are compared to his own, which are very crappy. This whole conversation leaves Gordon speechless. After he stops at a station, his driver then tells him that he needs to go and fetch some cars. Sir Handel refuses to go grab some cars. In protest, he knocks himself off of the rails, clearly not learning anything from Smudger. Peter Sam then arrives to help with Sir Topham Hatt also showing up, telling Sir Handel he's been a bad boy. Cut back to the shed, and Sir Topham Hatt tells him, be on your best behavior next time, you silly little goose. These episodes are definitely not bad. I kind of wish we got to spend a little more time with Rhaenyra in either of these two episodes. Because, both of them are a little more focused on Skarloey, and I don't think Rhaenyra even speaks in the second one, but, they're not bad. Sir Handel was admittedly a bit of a dick in that episode, too, but, the episode's aware of it, and he does get a bit of a punishment towards the end of it. So, all around, not bad stories. Peter Sam and the Refreshment Lady opens how the last episode ended off, with Sir Handel being sent into the shed. Because he's in the shed, Peter Sam now has to do all of his work on top of his own. Peter Sam is about to pick up a Refreshment Lady, but Sir Handel is like, dude, why do you want to do all that extra work? And then everyone else is like, yeah, fuck you. Peter Sam picks up his freaky-ass looking coaches, and then he's on his merry little old way, dippy-dippy-dee. He pulls into a station where Henry just so happens to be at, and why the fuck does he just look like Green Gordon in this shot? Peter Sam is supposed to deliver the lady to Henry, and if Peter Sam is late, then Henry will be very, very pissed.
Why does he look like Gordon, though?
Peter Sam then sings a funny little song.
I'm Peter Sam, I'm running this line.
Peter makes it to the station, and look at that lady and all of her beauty. But Peter Sam goes ahead and runs off without hearing a whistle, even though he swears he heard one. The coaches keep trying to tell him to stop, stop. You left the lady. And then he stops and the lady catches up to him. And so he just continues as normal before he pulls up to Henry. The lady then starts chewing him out for almost leaving her behind before Peter Sam replies, stating that he only left so quickly because he thought that Henry was going to leave if he was late, before she quickly stated that Henry was only joking. End of episode. In the next episode, simply titled Trucks, we get introduced to a brand new diesel engine.
My name is Rusty.
Yeah, this is a Rusty new engine. I don't have any personal connection to this character whatsoever. Harold stops by, wondering what Rusty's even doing here, with Rusty stating that he's simply here to help out the other engines. And so, Harold leaves. Sir Handel is apparently back at work again, but he is still very frustrated with shunting all of these trucks, before Gordon stops by and says, hey, maybe you should just play sick. And so Sir Handel does just that, with Peter Sam having to do his job yet again, although this time with the additional help of Rusty. They send all the trucks to the quarry, and they send them up this little conveyor belt thing. However, the trucks decide to play a little prank on Peter Sam, thinking that he's Sir Handel for some reason, and it results in crashing directly into Peter Sam and then breaking everything around them. Rusty then stops by to help clean up everything. Afterwards, the two have a nice little chat, and then Peter Sam heads back to the shed, all broken. Sir Handel says that he's very sorry for having all of this happen to Peter Sam. And so Sir Topham Hatt punishes Sir Handel by making him do all of Peter Sam's work. The episode ends with Rusty and Harold visiting each other on the mountain yet again. These episodes were fine. They're kind of more of the same of what we've been seeing a lot throughout this season thus far, which is episodes entirely based around this new set of engines, while all of our other favorite characters are pushed to the sidelines. Like, Thomas hasn't even showed up in a speaking appearance since episode 3, so kind of quazy, but they're not bad, even if Trucks has some trauma attached to it. Home at Last opens with Skarloey finally making it back home and being introduced to Rusty. Rusty tells him that he's basically just been filling in his shoes while he's been away, and so Rusty takes him back to the sheds to see Peter Sam. At the sheds, Peter Sam still has a broken funnel from the events of the previous episode. Even though he wants to go back out and work, Sir Topham Hatt insists that he stays in the shed to rest.
Hey man, I thought you were supposed to be a soulless dictator. What the hell's going on?
However, he does tell Peter Sam that he's got a surprise for him, and that surprise ends up being Skarloey. After catching up for a bit, Peter Sam notices that Skarloey got to meet Rusty, but asks if he's gotten to meet Duncan yet. Skarloey says no, and then tells him that Duncan is a bit of an asshole, mainly because he constantly tries to rock and roll whenever he's on the track. Skarloey then gets word that Duncan is in fact stuck in a tunnel, which seems to be a very common trend for this show. He makes it to the tunnel, and we finally get a good taste of what Duncan's character is truly like. George Carlin doing a third Scottish accent.
Of a plain, blunt engine. I speak as I find. Tunnels should be tunnels and not rabbit holes. This railway is no good at all.
The workmen all tell Duncan to just
Shut the fuck up!
because he's the reason he's in there to begin with. Regardless, they reluctantly try to get Duncan out of the tunnel, and lo and behold, they succeed. Duncan and Skarloey make their way back to the shed, where Sir Topham Hatt threatens to use Duncan's funnel as a dildo. The next episode features Skarloey just going along his line for a solid 30 seconds of the episode before eventually meeting up with Rusty. Skarloey congratulates Rusty on mending the track so well that he could barely tell where he even is. Afterwards, the two find themselves at a station where they run into Duncan, who is being a general douchebag. And then Duncan leaves. Duncan then grabs his objectively really ugly coaches and then makes his way off to a station where he meets James for the very first time. James is unaware of how much of an asshole Duncan usually is. Duncan continues to do his job until he enters a really rough track. His driver warns him not to keep rocking and rolling, but Duncan ignores his demands and ends up falling off the track. You know, I've noticed that a lot of these engines tend to fall off the track in the exact same way. Regardless, Skarloey and Rusty have to go save Duncan, not really caring much about getting Duncan safe, but rather the passengers, because again, they don't really like Duncan very much. Rusty manages to get the passengers safely sound, and Duncan gets back on the rails. Duncan apologizes to Rusty, and the two are now good friends. These episodes were a pretty decent introduction to Duncan, not to mention having Skarloey finally meet Rusty, and, you know, I like these ones quite a bit. I'm going to bed. I'm very tired. So I haven't been feeling very well, but nevertheless, I'm still going to continue on with Steam Timber. We've only got a few more days left, so let's make them count. Basically, in this episode, Peter Sam is still dealing with his funnel that got loose all the way back in Rusty's first episode. And the other engines just keep on teasing him about it. Until one day, he's going through a tunnel, and an icicle knocks the funnel off. And it's at that point where he has to make the rest of his journey with a little pipe wrench on top of his boiler, so that he can actually make it through the day. And then lo and behold, he gets a brand new, modern, contemporary funnel. He loves it, and all the other engines are extremely jealous. Then you get the next episode, Steamroller, where we got Sir Handel. And Sir Handel, he's not particularly fond of this steamroller named George,
who is very racist towards all types of trains. Not just steam engines like with the diesels, but trains as a species, really. It's just, they all suck. And so, one day, Sir Handel and George get in a bit of a race, and it results into George crashing into Sir Handel. And the circumstances of that is that a fence gets built up between the road and the track. Sir Handel just keeps on talking about steamrollers for days until the kids start making fun of him. And then he stops talking about steamrollers, and George never gets punished for his behavior. What the heck? I'm perfectly fine with characters in kids shows kind of being mean, as long as they learn a lesson at the end of the day. After all, this show is supposed to be an educational series for preschoolers at the end of the day. And so to have a character like George come along and learn basically nothing, and even Sir Handel doesn't really learn anything, he just knows more that George is kind of a dick. So, what's the deal with that? Yeah, not a very good episode. The Peter Sam one's alright, but this wasn't a very good introduction to George.
This episode opens with a little girl named Nancy rubbing Skarloey's funnel. Skarloey dreams of Rheneas as Nancy rubs his funnel, with Nancy then stating that Rheneas will be coming back from the works very soon, and apparently Rheneas was in the works. Duncan shows up, being very jealous over the fact that Skarloey gets his funnel polished, but not him. A pissed off Duncan then goes about his day until Skarloey's coaches have fallen off of the track, and now Duncan needs to go pick it up. As Duncan is on his way, he stops right in the middle of his tracks, with his driver then stating that they can't keep the passengers waiting for long. To which Duncan responds, "Why are you always thinking of the passengers instead of me? Am I not important to you?" Duncan then reluctantly moves forward, but he ends up stopping in the middle of a bridge anyway, with Skarloey having to come pick him up. Later that evening, Sir Topham Hatt gets a very stern talk with him.
Okay, so that was episode 13 actually, which means we are officially halfway through season 4. I'm not going to be doing this whole segment in this recording booth. I actually have a limited amount of time in here, so off we go to the bedroom. So for those of you that are new here, every time we get to a halfway point in one of these shows, I like to take a moment to just sit down and reflect on what we have seen. For season 1, it was really just a recap of the season itself. For season 2, we brought up the whole scrapyard and really useful aspect and the whole dictatorship of the island of Sodor. And for season 3, we brought up the weird role of the humans in the island of Sodor and how most of them don't require names. And so halfway through season 4, I definitely have a lot to say. Mainly due to the fact that the and friends part of the show is really at play in this season. Thomas has not taken center stage in any of the 13 episodes that we have seen so far in this season. Now granted, Thomas still shows up, and many of his friends do, but the vast majority of the focus time, in fact, every single episode, the main characters were these new engines, the narrow gauge engines. Which makes sense. As I stated, this is the last season of the show to feature episodes based off of stories by Reverend Audrey, and the narrow gauge stories are basically the only stories that they haven't covered yet. Sorry, I'm still sick. But it is kind of jarring that for over half of the season so far, we haven't really been paying any attention to most of the characters that we've met throughout the first 3 seasons. Granted, Thomas, Percy, Edward, James, Gordon, and Henry have all had speaking roles and short little scenes in episodes thus far, but none of them have ever taken center stage in the season just yet. On one hand, this is kind of a problem because, these are still your main characters, and we would kind of like to see more episodes about them. The characters we've been following throughout the first 3 seasons, instead of it suddenly being the Narrow Gauge Engine show. On the other hand, it isn't just called Thomas the Tank Engine. Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. So, seeing this whole new area of the island of Sodor that we've yet to see, of these old engines from the days past that are still hard at work, it's pretty interesting, Plus, I definitely have quite a bit of nostalgia for these specific characters, especially Rusty. God, I really liked Rusty as a kid. Rusty was cool. Weirdly enough, the 2 narrow gauge engines that were focused on quite a bit in this batch of episodes, Peter, Sam, and Sir Handel, were probably the ones I had the least amount of memories as a kid. It's not that I didn't like them per se, it's that I didn't necessarily gravitate towards any of the episodes where they were the center point, as opposed to Rheneas, or Skarloey, or Rusty, or Duncan, or even Duke. I mean, for Christ's sake, how could I not remember the Duke episode as a kid? But either way, you could say that this could be a sign of what's to come, where we start getting less and less episodes that are strictly about Thomas and the core Tidmouth Sheds gang, and more just about any random train on the island of Sodor. But enough talk about that, let's get back into things with Season 4, Episode 14. The next episode opens with Duncan being completely frustrated over those ding-dang passengers. And so Skarloey tells him a story about Rheneas and how he was helpful with the passengers. Yeah, we're finally getting a Rheneas-focused episode after, 15 episodes of knowing him. So the story begins with Rheneas taking a full train of passengers through this wet night, and it just wasn't very good. As he continues to go along the wet rails, he eventually stops dead in his tracks, getting a cramp. That's not me making a joke, that's actually what happens.
I got a cramp!
Rheneas' valve gear has jammed, and so he needs to get everybody to the next station so that he can fix it. And so he continues on with the passengers cheering him on, and lo and behold, he makes it to the station safe and sound. When the story is done, Duncan now gets more respect for his passengers, and the episode ends with Rheneas getting a big ol' welcome home for just about all of the engines that they can physically put on the set. These episodes, they weren't bad. They were pretty decent. All nice and charming. Nice that we finally get to fucking focus on Rheneas. I mean, God, he's been so underrepresented in this season so far. Damn. Good episodes. This episode opens with Rusty. Oh boy, do I like Rusty. I think he's pretty cool. He stops for a drink of water as Thomas passes by and realizes that his driver doesn't look too hot. Rusty asks him what's the matter, and his driver responds that they need another engine to help run the line. And so Rusty suggests that they get a Bluebell engine. He then encounters Douglas and Percy.
Oh my God!
Bro has seen better days. Rusty suggests to Douglas that he tries to find another engine where he found Oliver.
The fucking scrapyard!
Douglas then says, "Hey, I'm not sure about that, Chief." And Rusty's like, "Okay, fuck you then." But later that night, his driver's like, "Hey, let's go to the fucking scrapyard." And Rusty's like, "Okay," and then they go. And apparently it takes them an entire day to get there because it's sunrise when they start and it's night when they get there. So a bunch of Diesels are here for whatever reason, including Daisy, Diesel, and Mavis, but none of them talk, except for this mysterious voice that is telling Rusty to leave. It's really fucking weird. And then Rusty finds this old engine named Stephanie, who's just sitting there next to all these train corpses, and his driver is still there. Rusty introduces himself and gives him the offer. Stephanie's like, "Hell yeah, get me out of here." They put some coal in him, and the two are off in this really cool looking shot.
Like, the moon shouldn't look that big, but fuck it, it's cool.
The episode ends with everybody giving Stephanie a warm welcome, even though they were just about to fucking kill him. And hey, he's partnering with Rusty on the branch line. And now, after 15 episodes in a row, we finally get an episode focusing on the character whose name is in the fucking title. Thomas is talking to Percy about how marvelous his branch line is, and Percy then states, actually, Stephanie's is better. He's an engine from far away, and Sir Topham Hatt says that he's going to be visiting us. And Thomas is like, hey, fuck you. And hey, we look at that, it's Stephanie, the one and only. So Stephanie's complaining to Rusty about how short his branch line really is, and how much he wants a longer run. And so Rusty says, what the fuck are you complaining to me for? Tell your driver. And so Stephanie tells his driver, and his driver says, pack your bags, we're going to Disneyland. And by Disneyland, I mean Knapford Station. Everyone's super excited to see Stephanie, except for Thomas, who's being a real pain in the ass about it. My branch line's better, I'm the number one agent, my name's in the title. Timing was on Thomas's side, however, because just as he leaves, Stephanie arrives. He gets to working with Duck right away. However, once Thomas arrives late at night, he says he has lots to do. He's very busy now. But then an alarm goes off at the station and Thomas has to stop in order for another train to pass. Thomas is not pleased. And to add insult to injury, the other train was Stephanie. Womp womp. The next morning, Thomas is still pissed about what happened last night, until Stephanie comes by and apologizes and explains that a special visitor came by and wanted a special train, and that special train just so happened to be Stephanie. Thomas accepts the apology, and the two are now friends. These episodes are actually pretty decent. I'll be fully honest, this is so far the first character we've encountered in this show that I do not remember at all. Like, I straight up do not remember Stephanie's existence. Maybe he was created later and it was inserted into my brain. Ooh. Or I just don't remember because I was a small child. But regardless, these episodes aren't terrible. Even if the first one brought back some trauma from Oliver's first episode. Seriously, why do they keep fucking doing this with the whole scrapyard shit? Bowed Out opens with Stephanie on one of the last days of his visit on Sir Topham Hatt's railway. Sir Topham Hatt then states that Stephanie needs a little more help around here, and stating that a diesel will be on his way soon, much to the dismay of everybody, especially once the diesel arrives and, as typical behavior for most of the diesels, is kind of a dick.
I've seen worse. At least you're all clean.
So this diesel goes on and says that Sir Topham has to scrap all of them and feature more engines like him, literally stating that he wants the genocide of all steam engines. So, shocker of the century, the rest of the engines aren't very happy over the idea of this guy literally wanting them to die. Bro, that's just the same shot of Don and Douglas from earlier. Meanwhile, the diesel, who doesn't have a name by the way, is just purring like a freaking cat until some bowler hat guy's bowler hat goes flying off. The diesel starts running, but is making a weird clinking noise. Turns out, the bowler hat is inside of him. As a result, the diesel is unable to carry his train, so Duck and Stephanie have to do it for him. The two end up having to pull their train together, which makes sense because the two are pretty small engines to begin with, and it was meant for a big diesel engine. But they managed to do it pretty successfully. The episode ends with Duck and Stephanie being congratulated by the other engines, and the diesel runs into the sunset. He was never seen again. No, actually, this was his only episode. The next episode opens with Stephanie really wanting to carry some trucks, which comes as a shock to the other engines because trucks are generally not cool on their railway. Nevertheless, him and Percy decide to swap trucks for the day. As Stephanie goes on his way, he ends up stopping in front of a cricket game. As his driver and fireman watch the cricket game while they wait, unbeknownst to them, the ball actually lands inside one of the trucks. The players try to tell Stephanie, but he ends up leaving. So the players head into their old car named Caroline and try to race Stephanie down.
Bolty has been in the background this whole time, and he is still a hen house.
And so the race is on, with Caroline complaining how she's getting too old for this, and with Stephanie's driver eventually cutting on that they're being chased, and decide to play into the whole race. Eventually, once they stop, they realize that the ball is in there after a quick little explanation, and the players get their ball back. However, the race was a little too much for Caroline, and so Stephanie takes her to the cricket field where they finish the game. These episodes, I actually thought, were pretty charming. There hasn't really been like a bad episode this season thus far. I actually really enjoyed these episodes. It just seemed like these felt a little different. Like the Diesel episode in particular definitely felt like it also played in the whole genocide thing, but was still a decent episode, especially when the Diesel gets his comeuppance and we never really see him again anyways. The second episode was, a fun little race. Definitely gave me Thomas and Bertie vibes. Although it was a little weird with the cricket players, especially since we don't usually follow human characters in this show, especially aggressively British ones like these cricket players. But regardless, I had a good time with these episodes. But guys, I hate to break it to you, but even though we've only looked at 18 segments, we have one more video left for Steamtember 2024, which I honestly cannot believe. Henry and the Elephant was definitely one of my favorite episodes as a kid. Sir Topham Hatt wishes Thomas a job well done. Yeah, that's about it. We cut to the sheds, where all of the big engines are really, really bored, especially Henry. But Percy lets them know that they don't have to be bored for long because the circus is in town. And wow, I can't wait to see all of the fun little circus scenarios that the engines will get themselves into, and it all happened off screen. You don't fucking blue ball me with a fucking circus. If I get promised a circus, I better damn well see that fucking circus! After the circus, Sir Topham Hatt tells Henry that he needs to go investigate something that happened in a tunnel. This is troubling for Henry for obvious reasons. Henry gets all of the workmen to the tunnel. As the workmen make their way inside the tunnel, they immediately leave because they saw something make a monstrous noise. As Henry and his driver go in to investigate, out comes an elephant. So yeah, it was just an elephant that ran away from the circus. Its trainer then comes by, gives the elephant a nice drink of water, and then sprays the water all over Henry, much to his dismay. That night at the sheds, the other engines mock Henry for having to deal with that elephant. However, Thomas is the only one who calls Henry brave for just doing it in the first place. In the next episode, Thomas and Gordon are reflecting on their past fuck-ups, even showing clips from previous episodes for the first time in the show's history, to my knowledge. And God, does the difference between Season 1's visuals and Season 4's visuals shine so much bright here. The two of them return to the sheds to find them all decorated for a very special occasion. This is because the Queen is coming to Sodor. Later, Henry is at the station, and he's getting a tarp over himself to protect him from rain, because we all know how he reacted to rain last time. I swear that is the last time I'll reference the tunnel episode in this video, although I make no promises. A painter falls off the ladder and lands directly onto Henry, getting paint all over him, which sucks because he was supposed to carry the Queen. Sir Topham Hatt then decides to have Gordon take the train instead. Gordon agrees to, and then he arrives to Knapford, where the Queen greets all of the engines and everybody's just having the best of times. These episodes were pretty decent ones. Again, Henry and the Elephant was a classic. It was great to revisit it, and I didn't really remember the Queen one, but, there's kind of nothing to it. It's kind of expected that a British show like this would bring in the Queen, but I don't know, you kind of expect the Queen to play more of a role. You're mostly just kind of anticipating the Queen, and then she shows up, And she doesn't even fucking say anything, but regardless, these episodes were still a nice watch. And folks, that was Steamtember 2024. I'd like to thank you all so much for tuning in again this year. The views definitely weren't as good as they were the past couple of years, but you know, I guess that's probably expected given on how 2/3 of this entire month was entirely taken up by a show that doesn't have the talking trains in it as much, and not even in the thumbnail. But regardless, I still had plenty of fun making these videos, and it's pretty sad to be done with them. But don't worry, you won't just suddenly not see me for an entire year, because I do have other stuff going on this channel. Most notably, the show where I look at other animated movies and shows that aren't Thomas the Tank Engine, like Toon Talk. If you want to see me talk about something that I also love just as much as animation, I got Theater Talk, which is literally the same thing, but for theater. It's a lot of fun making those shows, and I'm really looking forward to getting back into the swings of making those videos, especially now that Halloween is coming up very, very soon. You can also check out my other channel, Weird TV, where I have another Thomas and Friends series called Thomas and Friends Abridged, which I had referenced quite a bit throughout this month. There's also plenty of other videos up there, mainly comedy sketches and vlogs, including full series like the aforementioned Thomas and Friends Abridged, but also Animal Logic and Chad Stevenson, the world's greatest YouTuber, along with several different fun little one-off videos. And of course, you can always stay tuned every September to find more Steamtember videos. But for now, this is it. Please be sure to stay tuned for not only all the fun videos that I have just mentioned, but also please come back next September so that we can finish off Thomas and Friends Season 4. And please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that bell to be notified on when all of that eventually happens. But until then, I will see you later. Bye! Here we go again. Time once again for another Steamtember, the daily series I do in September where each video I review a different episode of the Thomas the Tank Engine franchise. Year 1 consisted of the first 2 seasons of Thomas and Friends along with the first 4 episodes of Shining Time Station. Year 2 consisted of the rest of Shining Time Station Season 1 and Thomas and Friends Season 3 in its entirety. Year 3 consisted of Shining Time Station Season 2 in its entirety and the first 10 episodes of Thomas and Friends Season 4. So, lots of fun. It's great to look back on all this nostalgic goodness with trains and Thomas and stations and steamer. It's just a lot of fun.
This year's gonna fucking suck! So for this year, we are going to finish off the remaining 3 episodes of Thomas and Friends Season 4, followed by the entirety of the 3rd and final season of Shining Time Station. But then, we're going to finish off the year with the first 2 prime time Shining Time Station television specials. So, in case you've been doing the math, that is 3 episodes of Steamtember this year dedicated to Thomas and Friends, and 27 dedicated to Shining Time Station. Dear God, I think we lost the plot a little bit. Might suck from my perspective of having to watch all this stuff, because I like watching the Thomas stuff better than Shining Time Station, obviously. But that shouldn't change the fact that it will still be a fun time, especially considering on how not only was this year the 80th anniversary of the Railway series, but it is also the year that we lost Britt Allcroft, the creator of the Thomas and Friends television series and Shining Time Station. So this year's Steamtember will be entirely dedicated to her. So, please join me for Steamtember 2025.
Ah, dang it. My hat's still gone. Now I'm just gonna have to sit here and look sad. Anyway, let's talk about Thomas and the letter. Thomas and all of the other engines get a mysterious letter because they have a fan outside of the island of Sodor.
and they are going off of the island to see the fan. This is huge. This is like the first time in the entire series so far that we are going to go outside of the island of Sodor. This is the very first time that we are going to see what the rest of the world is like, all for the sake of seeing these children. Well, let's get going. Oh, Thomas gets in a bad accident and can't go. Okay, but it's fine because it gets fixed and they get to go anyways. Cool, that's the whole episode. The next episode features the triumphant return of Daisy the Diesel. It's been a hot minute since we've seen anything from her, since like season 2, I believe. Well, she did have a dialogue-less cameo in season 3, but other than that, we haven't seen her in a while, and she's just as rude as ever. She encounters a bull that was left loose, and she tries to get the bull, but the bull gets on the line, and it doesn't work. Toby tries to get the bull, and it ends up working out pretty well. Everybody makes fun of Daisy because of the whole bull crap incident, and she goes about her day. And that's the episode. Wow, that's such a great way to start off the season. I remember that image of Thomas in the wall with like all the bricks scattered all over the place, and that face. Oh, that was something. That was something cool. And I weirdly enough remember that episode with Daisy and the bull pretty well. I don't know why, but I do. Come to think of it, it's probably because of that redux that I mentioned back in year 1. Which, can you believe we're on the 4th year of these things? This is the 4th year of Steamtember, guys. So, here's the Steamtember 2025. We're just getting started, baby.
Hey everybody, I still can't find my hat. If anybody knows where it's been, please let me know. Send it to this address. It took my hair with it, so if you could please help out a fellow man in need and just find this damn thing. So we actually just reached a very big milestone with Steamtember. That being, we have officially watched the first 100 episodes of Thomas and Friends, which is a big deal, right? Not that many kids shows can say that they made it to 100 episodes, let alone 584. I think that's the right episode count. I'm not 100% sure. And so to celebrate this momentous occasion of sitting through 100 episodes on top of about 40 or so episodes of Shining Time Station, I decided that we're actually going to be doing something very, very fun. Every 100 episodes we get through for Thomas and Friends, I'm going to take some time aside and make a bonus video where we get to go ahead and talk about and look over additional aspects of the Thomas and Friends fandom that isn't just the main series, it's spin-offs and movies. And so for the very first one of these, it just makes the most sense to me to start things off with Thomas and Friends merchandise. There's a cat. There's a cat staring down at me. The cat staring at me. Hello. She's occupied with other stuff now. Oh, the other one's coming down. The cats are coming down to the basement. So naturally, the first place to start off with Thomas and Friends merchandise would be the toys. These toys have been huge. Toys have always been a massive part of the Thomas and Friends branding. I mean, toy trains already sell really well. You put a face on that train, suddenly you got gold. And so, yeah, I have a lot of Thomas and Friends toys over the course of the entire series. The entire original series of 24 seasons spans from all the way up to season 1 to, around when I stopped watching in the mid-2010s, around like season 15, I'm pretty sure. I forget the exact season I stopped watching, but we'll figure it out when we get there in 40 years or something. But before I get into that, it's important that we talk about some of the very brief history of Thomas and Friends toys, mainly on how some of the very first Thomas and Friends toys actually weren't Thomas and Friends. They were Shining Time Station.
Thomas, the cheeky, fussy little engine, and his pals from Shining Time Station could be rolling down the track at your house now. From the island of Sodor, there's faithful Edward, distinguished James, helpful Toby, and proud Gordon, heading for the station on schedule again. Noisy Harold, the helicopter, he's here too. And you can wave to Sir Topham Hatt as you roll through.
Ertl makes a whole world of Thomas in sturdy die-cast metal, along with playsets complete from tracks to town. Shining Time Station's Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends.
In terms of in the US, the very first line of toys based off of these characters tied into Shining Time Station, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, we got a market off of this show with talking trains, but people don't really know just the trains yet. So it makes sense to theme it around the show that people actually know about here in the States. Although everywhere else in the world, it's Thomas and Friends. Shining Time Station is really just a US thing. I never had any of these Shining Time Station Thomas toys to my knowledge, and to my knowledge neither did either of my brothers, but they're a neat thing. And they are such a neat part of Thomas and Friends history that these specific toys played a massive role in the fan-made Magic Railroad parody movie, which you guys should definitely check out if you haven't already.
I swear to God, this video is not sponsored by that channel or anything like that. I just think that movie was really fucking funny, okay?
God, my new haircut sucks. But with all of that out of the way, I think it's high time that we get into some of my childhood Thomas toys. Now, there were 3 types of toys that I definitely played with the most. There was the wooden railway toys, which were Thomas toys that were made out of wood, like the engines and all the people. They were made out of wood. The track was made out of wood and everything. Basically, everything was made out of wood.
The more places your child's imagination takes him, the bigger his world becomes. Take your child's imagination to more great destinations with the popular Thomas and Friends Wooden Railway by Learning Curve, where little engineers keep chugging away.
Let's go to the bridge, Thomas.
While learning something new every day on the magical island of Sodor.
It's time for what?
Like sharing lessons about friendship, fair play, and teamwork, captivating your child's imagination and teaching him how little kids, like little engines, can do big things. Every engine from the wonderful stories of Thomas and Friends comes to life in brilliant detail. No other play system offers longer-lasting adventures that grow with your child year after year. The possibilities are endless. Everyone is making tracks to great destinations. Let your child's imagination start here.
They were the Tomy toys. Tomy got the rights to make Thomas toys, which Tomy also got the rights to make Pokemon toys. To my knowledge, those were like the big licenses that they got.
It's a busy day on the railway for Thomas and Friends. With lots to see and do, Thomas needs a full load of water and coal to have lots of energy and be useful all day. Creating the world of Thomas and Friends can be hours of fun. Available now, only from Tomy.
And finally, there were also the Trackmaster toys. The Trackmaster toys were the ones that got the rights after Tomy, to my knowledge.
The thrills. The action. The suspense. It's all new Thomas at Action Canyon. Just like in the Great Discovery DVD, you'll burst through waterfalls and bust down bridges. Action Canyon with all new heights and daredevil drops. New Trackmaster Thomas at Action Canyon comes with everything you see here. Batteries not included. Stanley sold separately.
And I was too old for this shit by the time Mattel got a hold of the toy rights for the show.
We're here at the Thomas Sodor Cup. Who will win? All engines go!
Go, go, go! Whee!
Thomas wins! This time, you can connect to build your world of Sodor. Thomas and friends race for the Sodor Cup set.
So I don't have any of the Mattel toys. I don't have any of the toys for All Engines Go. I've seen them in the stores. They look like shit. So we're just going to go over some of my toys. All of the toys that I had as a kid. I don't know exactly how entertaining this will be to you guys, but I just think that it'll be a very fun nostalgia thing for me to just dig through all my old toys from one of my favorite shows, and we'll just see how entertaining it is for you guys. Okay, so this is one of the totes that has my Thomas and Friends Trackmaster and Tomy toys mixed together. Now, the way as a kid that I was able to tell the difference is that obviously two ways. The first way I was able to tell as a kid. The second way I wasn't able to tell till later when I was too old to be playing with these. The first way, obviously, the track is completely different. So the Tomy tracks, they're bright blue. The Tomy tracks are bright blue, and they have these little square ends. And the Trackmaster tracks are usually gray, and sometimes other different colors, like this one is green because it's supposed to be woods, and they're gray, but they have these little, like, I don't know what you call it, these little, like, roundish parts. I knew through different videos that there were these little, like adapter thing that can combine the two of them, so you can, like, combine your two tracks together. And I always wanted one of those as a kid, but I never got them. Maybe they're out there somewhere, but frankly, I'm at the point where I don't really need it. Why is there a laundry hamper here? The other way I was able to tell, I wasn't really able to tell this until I got older, were the faces of the toys themselves. Tomy primarily had access to the toys during the Model series run around the Hit Entertainment era, and Trackmaster mainly had them during the CGI series. To be honest, I didn't do any research for this segment outside of what I already knew, because I just think that just fits the vibe better. Maybe there might be a little bit of overlap and I'm just completely wrong, but to my understanding, that's just how it goes. Like, for instance, let's take a look at Percy over here. You could tell by the look of the face of this Percy toy. Well, first of all, he went through hell. I mean, just look at his buffers. But you can tell by the look of his face, he's clearly supposed to be modeled off of, well, a model. And, you know, to be honest, the toy, it still looks really good. It's obviously not an exact model from the TV show. It's definitely meant to be like a child's toy, and we'll get into those types of toys merchandise in a second, but you know, for what it is, it looks really good. And does this still have a battery in it? Oh my god, this still got a battery in it, so they can still go. I don't know if all these still have batteries in them, but that's really cool. But yeah, these run on batteries. Like, you can take them apart with a screwdriver, have your parents put a big ass battery in there. But what works about them is that they're not completely inactive if they don't have a battery in them. You can just roll them along your track, just like that. But it's always really cool when you have the battery in them, because they can just, like that. But yeah, let's take a look at this Thomas right over here. And this Thomas, you could definitely tell, was from the CGI run, because just look at that fucking face. Is there still a battery in him? Thomas still has a battery in it. That's awesome.
But yeah, I definitely played with both of these toys. Like, it's very clear which came from which era. But, damn it, they're still fun. They're still great. I love them both equally. And they both have a very special place in my heart. Now, what are some of the other engines we have in here? We got James. This was one of those Tomy ones. This was kind of useless because it could only be operated by a remote. My brother and I would always lose those remotes. You couldn't move them without the remote, so they were just kind of there. All right, we also got another Percy that's just like that. Has a little coal coach. All right, we got Gordon from the CGI series. A lot of these are from the CGI era. Does this still have a battery? All right, the first one that doesn't have a battery. The Gordon one still looks really good. All right, we got another Thomas. This one is from the model series, and you can tell that it's old as hell because, for one thing, this side of him is completely blank, and he's missing the little white bar thing that goes on both sides. So, yeah, this Thomas has been through some shit, but we love him anyway. What else is in here? Oh, this is a wooden crane that has nothing to do with Thomas, but I had it anyway. Okay, we got another Thomas, which is in much better condition and is also from the model series. But just like the Percy, he's missing a buffer. He's still great. I love him. I love how so many of these, like, I just can't sell. Not just because of the sentimental value, but because a lot of them are just fucking broken. Dear God, how many Thomases did I have? What is this, like the fourth one? They're exactly the same! Why is Murdoch's tender coach in here randomly? Alright, this is one of the coaches that they would have. I believe this was like for a circus set. I think this opens. It doesn't open. Let's get into some of the tracks. This one, as I mentioned earlier, this was for like I forget what it was called, like the Willow Woods. It had a bunch of trees. I lost it. This behemoth right over here was for a monster set that I tore down once I was into it, along with this tunnel. This was for the Blue Mountain Mystery movie, which was like the last Thomas and Friends movie I watched before I was too old for it. I mean, I was technically too old to be watching PBS at that time, but I didn't fucking care. We got this little light. I don't know if it ever worked, but we got a light. We got a station stopper. You just pull a switch and train stops. We got a shed. We got a shed right over here. Now, funny thing about these sheds. So I actually never had a Tidmouth shed while I was a kid. So I would just use these random sheds and a turntable as my Tidmouth sheds. Because like I never really saw them in the stores. So these were like the only sheds that I had to be where the characters would sleep at night. So, damn it, a kid had to do what a kid had to do. And I was fucking grateful for it. Oh, this one right over here. I know this just looks like a typical station, but what I would do with this all the time is that I would put this over like a station stopper track, and I would take Thomas, put him with Annie and Clarabelle, and I would recreate the end of the intro with it. Like I would recreate the end of the intro just like that, where he's stopping right in front of the station. And I would do that all the time. I did that shit all the time as a kid. I'm like, this is the shit. This is the life, man. Can you tell I'm autistic? Hey. Okay, I also got this cardboard box, which from the looks of it, mainly has just more engines in it. I'm just starting to realize that you can't really see it. So what am I to do about that? Well, there are a bunch of fucking boxes in this basement. We're just gonna keep stacking shit until you can see the box. There we go. Okay, let's get going. This was for, I believe that this was for the fire engine. This is for either the fire engine or the docks. I can't remember which one. Alright, we got Clarabelle right over here. I don't know where the fuck Annie is, but we got Clarabelle. There's Clarabelle right there. It looks like Duck fucking died. Wait, is this him right here? Oh, yeah. Never mind. He's okay. This? Who is this supposed to be? Is this supposed to be like the jet engine? No, it can't be the jet engine. Like, maybe it's Hector? I don't know, man. We haven't gotten that far in yet. I can't remember. Alright, we haven't met this character yet, but there's a couple of characters we haven't met yet. Well, we got Whiff, the garbage engine. He's been through shit. Here is Victor. This is Victor. He's another. Oh. Hello, I'm Victor. Still, he makes noise? So this is gonna be a bit of a spoiler for later, but the character was first introduced having red paint. He originally, canonically, was yellow. So that's why he's yellow. And fuck yeah, we got Salty. To be honest with you guys, I was shocked that Salty wasn't introduced into the show until like season 5. Because for me, Salty's always been there. Like Salty, he's the guy. Salty was always that guy who was always there. Oh, we found the OG Victor. OG Victor right there. It's like I believe one of the first new characters we meet in the CGI series. Speaking of CGI characters, we got this guy. His name is Charlie. I don't know why I have a toy of him, because I don't remember liking Charlie that much. Charlie fucking sucks. Get him out of here. Alright, there. We got a little coal coach that can flip like that. Flip like that. It's really cool. We got another Thomas. Oh my god. Oh, we got Bulgy the Bus. Bulgy the Bus. I guess this is a spoiler for later, because I don't remember Bulgy ever getting green. But I guess this was the only Bulgy I had. Oh, we got Scruffy! Oh, Scruffy. Now, I've already recorded the episode where we get introduced to Scruffy, but you guys haven't seen it yet. So stay on the lookout for Scruffy. We got a little broken wooden railway Emily. We haven't met Emily yet. We got the corpse for one of the newer CGI characters. I think his name was Luke. We got not one, but 2 Tobys that are exactly the same. And then they kiss. So like, I remember this diesel engine. Like, I remember him. I watched him in the later season of the shows. But I do not remember his name for the life of me. Somebody in the comments, please help me remember who the fuck this guy's name is. We got another James. We love him. We love James. James is a little bastard. Alright, we got Freddy. Freddy is a bit of an interesting character because he's technically one of the first characters we meet in CGI. But he's technically a character who only exists in the model series. How can that be both ways? You're just gonna have to stay tuned and find out. So like, we have another Clarabelle, but no Annie. What's going on? Alrighty, I got 2 Diesel 10s. I got exactly 2 Diesel 10s. One is from Thomas and the Magic Railroad, and another is from the CGI film Day of the Diesels. And Diesel 10 has primarily been a part of like 3 pieces of Thomas Media. I believe he only showed up in like a couple episodes of the show, but he mainly appeared in Thomas and the Magic Railroad, Calling All Engines, and Day of the Diesels, which I believe is what this one is from. And this one is clearly meant to market Thomas and the Magic Railroad, I believe so. But what I like about both of these is that you got Pinchy right over here. It was always really cool. Diesel 10. You don't want to mess with him. The funny thing is, I don't think I ever had a Diesel growing up, but I had 2 Diesel 10s. And last but not least, we have a character who I wasn't even familiar with as a kid. And what do you know? Coach is right here. And the character's name is Connor. Now, Connor, I think, represents something very fascinating because Connor represents the time where I stopped watching the show, because I was very much still playing with the toys and watching my old favorite episodes.
but I don't think it was keeping up the show's new episodes and its new movies. And so, that Christmas, I got this Connor toy for Christmas. And that was the last Christmas I got Thomas the Tank Engine toys. I didn't know who this guy was. I only knew his name because it was on him. I have no idea what his personality is like. And he also represents something very fascinating because he's clearly not meant to be a steam train. He is very much meant to be a modern train, which I'm sure we'll see something very interesting for the show. I mean, just put him right next to Toby. I feel like these don't belong in the same world. Like, Thomas and Friends was always such a fun time capsule, and we suddenly have this modern train with Connor. I don't know, maybe the show will make a big deal about that when we finally get introduced to him, but this just represents a transitional period for me where Thomas and Friends got modern engines from the 21st century. It was time for me to stop watching. And it was time to put all the toys in the storage. Oh, I've just been birthed by Thomas the Tank Engine. This is what a college degree will get you, kids. So I got a couple more pieces of Thomas toys to show off. Mainly this tent. It's kind of on the floor now. But I would also like to show you guys one last Trackmaster toy. That being a big guy of a character we haven't met yet. Cranky the Crane. Yeah, I remember Cranky being a big part of the show. I remember playing with this guy a lot. He's covered in a bunch of dirt now because he's been in the basement floor for God knows how many years. He used to have a remote that would control him, and you would go all the way, like, you can move his head. You can pull this lever, and you can adjust it. That's Cranky the Crane. And finally, I would like to show you guys my wooden railway toys. I had a lot of them as a kid, just as much as the Trackmaster and Tony stuff, but I lost most of them. I don't know where the grand majority of them are, but I do have about 5 to 4 of them that I want to show up for you today. First of all, obviously, we got Thomas. There's not a whole lot I could say. It's Thomas. We also got about half of James. I don't know where his tender went, but this was all I could find of James. We finally have about 2 characters that we haven't met yet. We got Harvey and Arthur. I like Harvey because he's got the little crane, and Arthur he moves a little funny, like look and go. And last but not least, I believe what I'm about to show you are the Shining Time Station toys, because just because I said I did not play with these toys doesn't mean that they may or may not have been in my house, because I couldn't tell the difference. Obviously, they were just Thomas toys, but they look like the Shining Time Station ones, so I'm just gonna assume that they are, because these were the characters that came out. First off, we got Henry. There's Henry right over there. Not much to complain about him. He's Henry. He's a little bit of a sad sack. We also got James. We got James the Red Engine. We got Toby the Tram Engine right over here. Look at that magnificent box. And finally, we got 2 diesel engines. We got Daisy, everyone's favorite character, Daisy, who I believe has only showed up like twice. And we got my boy Rusty. Unironically, we stand Rusty. So yeah, if there's anybody out there watching this who is more familiar with Thomas and Friends toys, and in particular the history of them, please correct me in the comments below if these in particular
are the Shining Time Station toys, or if they're just standard Thomas toys. Alright, so that's about it for the toys that I've played with. Now, I don't think I'd be doing my job properly if I don't at least mention the Bachman sets. Now, these are not necessarily toys for kids. These are replica models that are directly ripped from the show. These are meant for model train collectors that were fans of the show as children, so that they can add the Thomas characters to their train sets, where everything that I've showcased in this video so far was purely meant for the enjoyment and pleasure of children. These are clearly meant for adult collectors, so I obviously did not have any of them as a kid. Although, my brother did have a couple model trains. They are gone. But yeah, that's basically what I want to do for this segment. I wanted to just showcase all of my favorite toys from when I was a kid. You know, this video might have seemed a little stupid or silly for a lot of you, but I think that going through all of these old toys, it really does bring us back to a simpler time. A time where we didn't really have to think about what life had in store for us. We didn't really have to think about all the drama that would be happening in our circles with relationships and friends and all that type of stuff. And we wouldn't have to worry about careers. All we had to worry about were the adventures that we would go on with our favorite toys, and seeing those new adventures on TV with our favorite characters. Speaking of those characters, next time I see you, we will be taking a look at Season 4, Episode 12 of Thomas and Friends. Well, technically it's Season 4, Episodes 23 and 24, but come on guys, let's go off the Amazon listing. So, I'll see you when I see you. Yo, where the fuck's his funnel? After a flashback to one of his earliest appearances, Oliver is going about his day in the yard until he encounters Scruffy, one of the troublesome trucks, and perhaps the most iconic troublesome truck because he's the only one with an actual name. Naturally, with the trucks being the trucks, none of them are being very well behaved, and none of the engines are quite fond, including Toad. You know, that little caboose fucker that Oliver has. After a discussion with Toad and Duck, Oliver then has to take Scruffy out. And then, oh my god, Scruffy just fucking died! So yeah, Scruffy was being a little petty and didn't feel like doing the job, so Sir Topham Hatt puts Oliver off the hook, and somehow results in Scruffy getting punished, even though it was Oliver's fault! But why the fuck did they make his face so small? Anyway, Scruffy's all better, yay! The next episode features a nice starry night, and what do the engines have to do? Fish. So yeah, Henry is forced to deliver some fish. He's not happy whatsoever, because as we all know, Henry is the saddest fuck on the entire island. Later in the evening, they sent out Duck in order to help Henry get up all of the steep hills with all of the fish. Incidentally, this late into the season, this late into the show even, after over 100 episodes, they are still calling this hill Gordon's Hill, even though it happened all the way back in episode 2. Points to the show's continuity, which is pretty unheard of in this type of show, especially around this time. Duck ends up crashing into Henry, making fish get everywhere. The next morning, Thomas brings the breakdown van in order to fix everything, noting that what caused the crash to begin with was the fact that Duck's light actually fell off. And then the episode just ends there. The end, I guess. These episodes are not bad. they're far from what I would call memorable episodes, especially this late into the classic era, but I wouldn't complain much about them. It's also neat to see the first appearance of easily the most famous troublesome truck, and to see that truck get murdered. Fun kids show. This episode opens with Toby going to a party. Oh, that's nice. I guess nothing really bad could be happening here. Oh my god! Ah! 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 Okay. He's only there with a single frame. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Anyway, it turns out that Toby can't participate in the parade simply due to the fact that they don't have any room for him. That's fun. It's like that moment where you and your friends all want to go to the function and you can't go. You can't go at all because there's just no room in the car. And, you can't drive, so you're just kind of shit out of luck, man. You're just the only one. Even though there's definitely room if you just clear some space, Kevin! So Percy meets Toby at a station, and Percy wants to know why Toby's feeling so gloom. But then Sir Topham Hatt comes and asks Percy to go by the harbor, leaving his trucks right there. Percy goes to the harbor, and the trucks there are being fucking assholes. And so, Percy reacts to this as any sane person would. Takes all the trucks at the harbor and throws them overboard and lands into this ship. And somehow, the ship is the one at fault for all of this, even though it was definitely Percy's fault. And so, what do? They take this little boat and they just strip him on the land. He can never go in the water again. He's just there for the rest of his life. What the fuck? How does this have anything to do with the Toby stuff? And the next episode opens with Bulgy just sitting there, still a henhouse over a season later. What the hell is wrong with this show? This episode mainly follows this mail truck that doesn't have a face. What is going on? Later that night, Thomas and Percy thank the postman for all of his hard work, while the postman gives all of the credit to his van, even though he's the one who controls the van, and, as I mentioned earlier, the van doesn't have a face. The next morning, Percy and his driver notices that Postman Tom and his van are nowhere to be found, with the new postman only delivering all that mail on a bicycle. The next morning, Tom is back, but with some sad news. Apparently, his supervisor thinks that the van was too expensive, so he got rid of it, which means that the postman can't help Thomas and Percy with the mail run anymore. However, Tom then gets a call that he needs to meet with Sir Topham Hatt, and so he enters Percy in order to get there on time, but not knowing that he left the bike on Percy's mail coach, and as Percy leaves the station, the bike falls and Percy runs right over it, destroying it. But it turns out absolutely none of that matters because the next day, Tom gets his car back! Yay! This is how the season ends. Wow. That was anticlimactic. Usually we end things on a big Christmas special, but this time we just didn't. What a lame way to end the season. Well, anyway, it's still the end of the season, and you know what that means. Good afternoon and welcome, students, to the train count for Season 4. Now, I hope that you are all taking very extensive notes for today's lecture. For those of you that are new here, basically every time we finish a season of the show, but before we get into our final season analysis, I like to do something a little bit fun and just count all the engines that we've seen so far, because by God, there are a lot of trains in this show. Now, it had admittedly been a while since we last did this. We haven't done this since 2023, where we finished off Season 3. So in case you don't remember, we ended off Season 3 with a grand total
of 19 engines. Oh god, that is awful. We ended season 3 with a grand total of 19 engines on the island of Sodor. Now admittedly, 19 is not a lot of trains, but don't worry, this season more than made up for that pitiful number. And that is especially present in Season 4, Episode 1, where we are introduced to the narrow gauge engines, where we get to meet Duke, Peter Sam, Sir Handel, and Smudger, who is never seen again, which means that we can go ahead and add those 4 engines to the count. Like already in the first episode, we got 4 new trains. And in another episode, I forget which one it was, I watched this over a year ago, we're introduced to Rheneas and Skarloey, which brings the grand total to 6 engines already. Holy shit. Then in the episode Rusty helps Peter Sam, we are introduced to Peter Sam. No, we're fucking not, because we already met him at the top of the season. We are introduced to Rusty. I have weird connections to this character. Very, very weird connections, which I cannot get into for legal reasons. Okay. Regardless, Rusty is the 7th engine that we have met on the island of Sodor for season 4. We have, guess what? Yet another new engine to add to the count for the island of Sodor, and he's another narrow gauge engine. And lo and behold, we can bring up the grand total of Scottish engines to 3, because we also met Duncan this season. Duncan was introduced in, I honestly forgot which episode. Put it right here. Future film up. Put it right there. It's this episode. Yeah, we can put Duncan right there at number 8. Narrow gauge engines. It's quite a lot of them. All right, you think like we got this whole new line. I mean, this is just about as many engines as we've had on the main branch line in the start of the show. And so you'd think that this would be plenty of trains for one season of the show. Fuck that. We also got Stephanie. We got Stephanie that I think was introduced in Thomas and Stephanie. I think he first showed up in that. I mean, that's what I assume. Editor, if I'm wrong, please correct me. Yeah, put Stephanie as the 9th engine. And finally, the 10th and final brand new engine that we met on the island of Sodor during Thomas and Friends Season 4 was Class 40. You guys remember Class 40, right? The diesel? The diesel engine. You know, he's a diesel. He was never seen again. That brings the grand total of engines on the island of Sodor to 29 in the grand scheme of the show. That's disappointing because I wanted that number to get into the 30s. I was genuinely expecting us to get to that sweet 30. That would be really cool if we could get to 30 trains for 4 seasons, because we passed 100 episodes this season. But I guess we can't have too many good things. Regardless, we got 10 new engines this season, which I believe was the most amount of new engines we had for a season so far. Which means that number can only go up from here. So I'm very much excited for that. So stay tuned for the season 5 train count, ladies and gents. We're gonna have a gay old time. Class dismissed. Oh wait, there's nobody in here. Crap, I don't think I should legally be in here.
Hey gang, welcome to my closet. Can you believe that I've never filmed in here before? Well, I guess I technically have a long time ago, but all this stuff wasn't in there. But anyways, so that was season 4, and my thoughts, that was really
interesting. So this season gave us the biggest change in the show so far, and that was the introduction of the narrow gauge engines, where just about half of the episodes in this season were completely about them. The main characters that we got to know for the first 3 seasons mainly showed up like, I don't know, a couple times every 3 episodes. And it wasn't until, I believe, Thomas and Stephanie, where the main characters suddenly came back into the show and started getting stories. But this is also a pretty significant season, because while it is still technically part of the classic era of the series, it's still part of the golden age, it does in fact mark the end of things just a little bit. I just realized that the second row of DVDs was crooked. It was very, fucked up. It was very slanted. I didn't like that. This was the last season of the show to feature George Carlin narrating in the US. It was the last season to have its episodes be featured in Shining Time Station, and it was the last season to have episodes directly based off of stories written by the Reverend W. Awdry. So, from here on out, the remaining 20 seasons of the show are all original stories created for the show. Because they weren't just gonna stop making episodes because they ran out of source material. This show was a massive hit in the UK. Shining Time Station was making it popular in America. It was soon going to become a successful property in the US, separated from Shining Time Station. So there was no way they were going to stop making episodes. But the real question is, can the show properly work without any stories made by its creator? It's going to have to, because right before season 5 officially airs, something is going to happen in the real world that will permanently affect how the people making the show and the corporations that own the show will create products around it forever. But it is going to be a while before we have to dive into that fully, because tomorrow we are going to be starting the final season of Shining Time Station, which means that for the rest of Steamtember 2025, we are not going to be watching any Thomas episodes. It will be all Shining Time Station all the time, because not only are we doing the entirety of season 3, but we're doing half of the family specials. So if you want to hear me talk about Shining Time Station season 3 for the rest of the month, then please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and ring that bell so that you'll be notified on when all of those videos happen. All 27 of them. But until then, I will see you later. Bye!